And that picture just demonstrates how those, the growth difference between those treatments. However, the major finding, or the finding that I found exciting out of this experiment, was that the winter dormant or semi-winter dormant cultivar was able to maintain more favourable shoot water potential under those different drought levels. So that sort of, again, it's that winter dormant or semi-winter dormant cultivar being adapted to environment or adapting to an environmental stress better than the highly winter active one. And other investigators also noticed these sort of things under glasshouse conditions in the field. So, like other investigators have seen a greater degree of root branching and Robbie said, crown position and all that kind of thing with winter dormant cultivars, and that's actually increased under dryland conditions. There's a maintenance of stomatal conductance by winter dormant cultivars compared to highly winter active cultivars under drought conditions, and also winter dormant cultivars are able to maintain their taproot carbohydrate reserves under dryland or drought conditions where the winter active ones are using them up. So I guess, so what's so special about winter dormant types? So how are they able to do this compared to winter active types? Because winter dormant ones are actually freezing tolerant. We don't usually classify winter dormancy, associate winter dormancy with drought tolerance. So, but let's start thinking about some of the effects of freezing temperatures on plants and how they may be similar to effects of drought on plants. And this picture up here is a picture I took when I was over in the US, but it's probably indicates they've got like a fescue lawn in the middle there, which is nice and green. It's under snow. But on the very side of that picture there is a C4 relative to sugarcane, a perennial relative to sugarcane growing there, and it's in the middle of winter. I mean, I think it's a -20-degree day, and it's nice, brown and dead. So you've got a plant here which is able to adapt to freezing temperatures, and the plant over there, the C4 plant or that sugarcane relative, isn't able to adapt to freezing temperatures. And the reasons why these plants differ in their adaptation is freezing temperatures cause cellular membrane damage, or the plants modify the cellular membranes to prevent the damage. There's processes called which are intercellular and extracellular ice formations. So intercellular ice formation is actually quite damaging to plants. It's where ice forms inside the cells, they sort of explode or rupture, it kills the cell, where extracellular ice formation can actually be beneficial for plants trying to survive freezing temperatures. So it's ice that forms outside the cell, it sort of encases the cell and protects the cell from freezing or from further damage. And that's actually beneficial in plants. Plants which adapt to freezing temperatures actually encourage that extracellular ice formation. However, it does lead to cellular dehydration, so that ice will suck water out of the cells. And as a consequence, the plants increase their cell cellular concentration to sort of counteract that dehydration. But those two bottom ones, the cellular dehydration and increase in cell cellular concentration, also occur when plants are exposed to drought. So there is some similarities in this stress pathway. And so because of this, we thought, well, maybe the winter dormant cultivars are freezing tolerant or able to handle freezing temperatures. Perhaps that sort of process is also used as the plants try and adapt to drought conditions. So in 2008 and 2009, there's another picture of the world up there, which shows a nice arrow from Tasmania over to the US. Doesn't come out, sorry. But in 2008 2009, I joined the Atlantic lab, which was interested in researching winter survival of perennial foragers. And because they had the expertise and knew this pathway really well. And that's me there with one of the other people in the lab, and we're out there digging up frozen soil to get rhizomes out so they could investigate freezing tolerance and survival within I think that was a prairie grass or a prairie grassland at that stage. But yeah, this lab is crazy because they like working in -20 degrees, where everybody else in the West escapes inside, where these guys actually do their field work in the middle of winter. So they're pretty extreme, but what they do have is a good knowledge of the freezing tolerant pathway in lucerne or alfalfa, as they call it. So I went over, took some samples over from our drought experiments, and we investigated a range of genes which we thought might be involved in this drought adaptation, which were also involved in freezing tolerance. And I've got 3 expression profiles presented up there with exposure to show their expression with exposure to drought at 14 days of drought and 35 days of drought, with the semi-winter dormant cultivar on the far side and a highly winter active cultivar on the side closest to me. So the CAR1 gene, the top one, is actually a gene that's pretty high up in the freezing tolerance regulatory pathway. It encodes for a nuclear signalling protein, which means that that protein then signals within the nucleus to turn on other genes. So we know it's pretty high up in the pathway. And we also know it's critical for the freezing tolerant pathway because it's expressed in winter dormant cultivars when they're exposed to freezing temperatures, but not in winter active cultivars when they're exposed to freezing temperatures. So it's critical for that freezing tolerance. The high molecular weight vegetative storage protein is a gene which encodes for a vegetative storage protein, or a VSP. And a VSP of vegetative storage proteins, you know how carbohydrate reserves are important in ryegrass regrowth? Well, vegetative storage proteins are important in lucerne regrowth. So and this is one of those. It's one of them. There's 3 in lucerne. And we actually thought that this was what is actually driving things. We thought the vegetative storage protein was going to be affected. The other one is sucrose-synthase, and despite its name being a synthase, if it builds things, it actually degrades starch. So it's involved in starch degradation following defoliation. So the 2 bottom ones are genes which are critical in regrowth. The top one's actually a regulatory gene. So what we did was we took the plants that were exposed to drought, and ones that weren't exposed to drought at different times in the regrowth period, and we have found that while sucrose-synthase expression and the VSP expression didn't really change. There was a cultivar difference, but it didn't change or wasn't affected by drought, exposed to drought. Where the CAR1 it was upregulated in the winter dormant cultivar, or semi-winter dormant cultivar, but not in the highly winter active cultivar. And that's when it all clicked for me. That goes, this sort of confirms that winter dormancy, freezing tolerance, and drought tolerance are linked. So what does all this mean? And that's what I believe it means, that there's a linkage between these 3 things. And I guess the next step is there a role for winter dormant lucerne in Australian farming systems? Because we don't utilise them very much now, we're more focused on winter actives. So, and I think there probably is a role when we've got a dry land or in a low rainfall environment, or in a deficit irrigation strategy where we're going to be exposing the plant at some point in time to drought stress. So we want that drought tolerance in there so the plant survives, is able to maintain some level of production. Whereas in a high rainfall environment, or if irrigation is available, maybe more winter active cultivar, or more winter active cultivar is best suited because we're going to get that extra growth. But again, this is no silver bullet to lucerne management. I'm sorry I haven't cracked that problem yet. Lucerne's still going to be a difficult crop to manage. You've still got to get your defoliation or your grazing management right. You've got to get the AH up, you've got to correct soil aluminium toxicity if it occurs. So all those still principles of lucerne management still hold. It's just that winter dormant is probably more drought tolerant. Yes, Robbie?
If, say, high rainfall environment, and we're talking this winter active lucerne, so what's the story with waterlogging, or call it just excess of water in winter?
Yeah, and
will survive, or will be
winter active lucerne probably not.
No.
Yeah, so waterlogging is another stress, and that's a different stress pathway. So there's, we can't really suggest whether winter dormant or winter active is going to be better because it's entirely different stress pathway. It's not where the freezing tolerance pathway and the drought tolerance pathway appear to be linked.
Okay.
So. My current research now, we're actually, because this was done with 2 cultivars, now we're going to investigate this across a range of Australian cultivars, a range of levels of winter dormancy, from winter dormant right up to highly winter active. We're going to do it at a whole plant, so it's done in a glass house. It's being done in a glass house. We're doing it at a whole plant and at a cellular level. So, particularly at the cellular level, right down to the gene expression level. So we're going to look at this CAR1 gene again, but we're also going to look at a range of pretty much every gene that we think is involved in freezing tolerance. We can also study their expression and see which ones are involved and which ones aren't, so we can get a grip on how similar the 2 pathways are. Are they the same pathway, which I believe they are. And basically we're going to identify if this process is causal or associative. So if this process is causal, which means that one causes the other, we can then say, well, winter dormant cultivars are definitely going to be more drought tolerant. Whereas if it's associative, it means I've got a bit more work for me to do to work out exactly what's going on. So what would be really cool is hopefully we'll be able to base level of drought tolerance in lucerne off the winter dormancy rating in the short term. And in the long term, the Americans have actually managed to break the linkage between winter dormancy and freezing tolerant. So, and while they've only broken it for they've got cultivars which are semi-winter dormant at the freezing tolerance of winter dormant cultivars. Hopefully, and they're working towards having winter active that are freezing tolerant. Hopefully, if this all works out, we'll be able to utilise that winter active cultivar, which is freezing tolerant, because it should also be drought tolerant. So that's sort of the long-term goal. And
So when you talk with winter tolerant, it's a number 4. It's winter dormant. It's a number 4 type, or it's a number 6 type.
Semi-winter dormant is pretty much a 4 to a 5.
4 to 5. That's
yeah. So 6 to 8 is more winter active, and then 8 and I'm saying 8 and above is a highly winter active.
Yeah. Okay.
So 8 to 12, whatever it is, and then the winter dormants are 1 up to 4 type thing. So
yeah.